We don't normally put Schubert in the same ranks as Bach, Mozart and Beethoven, but then again, he was so young when he died. He died in 1828 of typhoid or syphilis, aged only 31 years old. Maybe, had he reached the ripe old age of Mozart at 35 years old, he would be counted as one of the giants. After all, who knows what masterpieces we were deprived of due to his early death. In a musical career that lasted perhaps 18 years, Schubert produced over 1,000 works of music of incredible quality. So why is he sometimes overlooked as one of the greats? The thing is, his late symphonies are good enough to rival Beethoven's, particularly his unfinished 8th Symphony and the astoundingly original 9th Symphony, known as the Great Symphony. And remember, Schubert completed his 9th when he was only 29 years old. When Beethoven was 29, he had only just started his 5th. Schubert's string quartets can stand beside Haydn's and Mozart's. He was the string player in his family quartet, and he wrote around 11 quartets when he was only a teenager. For classic examples of his chamber music, listen to, say, the Last Quartet in G major, or his quintet in C major, his Trout Quintet, or his Death and the Maiden Quartet. And his piano music certainly paved the way for later Romantic composers, such as Schumann and Chopin. Take his impromptus, his almost impressionistic Moments musicaux, or his sonatas, particularly his late sonatas. But today, Schubert is most famous for his Lieder, which is German for song. He wrote around 600 songs, which remain at the heart of the classical canon of songs. At 17 years old, he was writing, on average, 2 songs a day, and this led ultimately to his 2 major song cycles, Die schöne Müllerin and Winterreise, both parables expressing the pains of adolescence, love, loss, loneliness, jealousy, the feeling of a loss of home, and a reconciliation with the place around him. These song cycles perhaps solidified song as a serious art form, and they remain pillars of Western musical history. Then why has Schubert taken a bit of a back seat compared to the other so-called Viennese masters? Well, there might be several reasons. One is that Schubert was overshadowed throughout his lifetime by Beethoven, that giant of a composer. Both were centered around Vienna, and Beethoven died only a year before Schubert. Schubert was once recorded as saying to a friend, "I hope to be able to make something out of myself, but who can do anything after Beethoven?" In fact, it was after Beethoven's death that Schubert completed his groundbreaking 9th Symphony, the Great. Perhaps Schubert finally felt freed from the pressure that Beethoven's symphonies placed upon every composer's shoulders. Because of this overshadowing, very little of Schubert's work was published in his lifetime. It wasn't until the late 1800s that Breitkopf and Hertel published critical editions of his works, edited by Brahms no less. Another reason why he might not have the universal acclaim of Beethoven is perhaps because of the sheer length of many of his works. Schubert often composes on a different scale, taking much more time, allowing himself to draw things out slowly. This is not due to lack of craft, but because he uses different kinds of processes and tools. As the pianist Alfred Brendel said, "In Beethoven's music, we never lose our bearings. We always know where we are." Schubert, on the other hand, puts us into a dream. Beethoven composes like an architect, Schubert like a sleepwalker. But a major reason, I think, is that much of his best music was written not for the concert hall, but for the home. His chamber music, piano music, and song cycles were written to be performed at homes, for intimate, small audiences. As I speak these words, musicians all around the world are being asked to stay at home. And while for some of us this may feel like imprisonment, many of us may slowly discover a new reconciliation with the idea of home. Home not only as the place where we live, but the people we live with, our family, our neighbours, our community, and also the way in which we live, our routines, habits, rituals, and the ways in which we make ourselves feel at home. It was Roger Scruton who said, "Schubert is the poet of home and the loss of home." And as we recapture a sense of what it means to be truly at home, we might have a stronger understanding of Schubert's music and what it's trying to say to us. And we might also rediscover the joy of playing music alone, or in the company of a small pocket of loved ones. Schubert's music teetered on the edge between the classical and the romantic. He would seemingly master the forms laid out by Mozart, Haydn and Bach, and yet also explore new regions of harmony and tonal relationships, new styles of writing which would pave the way for later romantic composers. We might love him for his melody, the melodiousness of his final B-flat piano sonata, or the timeless melody of Du bist die Ruhe, or for his sense of capturing inward, intimate expression which feels honest and free of sentimentality, or for his probing into the depths, the apparent fascination with the shadow of death in his late works. There are too many different shades of Schubert to count, or to cover in a book, let alone a video. So I want to focus on one piece of music, a song he wrote when he was just 17 years old, Gretchen Am Spinnrade, or Gretchen and the Spinning Wheel. Written around a year before his more famous song El König, it might be Schubert's first masterpiece. It may be no small stretch to say that this song changed the way that composers thought about songwriting. The subject of the song comes from Goethe's Faust, a story where Faust sells his soul to the devil in exchange for a great life. A girl comes with that life, Gretchen. And there's a point where Gretchen is alone in her room spinning yarn, and she starts to freak out about her relationship with Faust. This scene, her in her room with a spinning wheel, worrying about her relationship, is what Schubert sets to music. The text shows the psychological torment that she's going through, with stanzas like, "My peace is gone, my heart is heavy, I shall never ever find peace again," or "My poor head is crazed, my poor mind shattered." So this song starts in D minor, and we actually hear the spinning wheel in the piano, the spinning in the right hand, and the click-clacking of pedals in the left hand. Then she sings, "My peace is gone, my heart heavy."
Meine Ruhe ist hier, mein Herz ist schwer.
The music immediately begins to spin itself through different keys, reflecting her restless anxiety. There's a middle section where she remembers his proud bearing, his noble form, the smile on his lips and the power of his eyes, and the attention turns away from her and onto him. The spinning wheel stops, or at least the foot pedals stop, as she begins to think of him.
Sein hoher Gang, seine edle Gestalt,
The music builds in this accelerated excitement as she remembers him.
seines Mundes Lächeln, seine Augen Gewalt.
Until the almost primal cry of, "Ah, his kiss!"
Und ach, sein Kuss.
And she remembers her seducer's heart-stopping gesture of a kiss. Then, after a pause, this restarts. Only now it's incomplete. The wheel isn't fully turning yet. Slowly, bit by bit, the wheel begins to spin back into motion, and we are back into Gretchen's introspection.
Meine Ruhe.
But now everything has changed. and this isn't a simple recapitulation of the first section. She starts building in excitement again. She sings, "My bosom yearns for him. Ah, if I could clasp, if I could hold him." And if you thought that the memory of the kiss was a climax, well, there's another one coming, where she now wishes that finally she could perish in his kisses. This is the dynamic climax of the song, where everything has been leading to, in her confusion of love and despair. But whereas the poem ends there, with her wanting to perish, Schubert adds one more line. He repeats the first line of the poem again. "My peace is gone, my heart is heavy." On a purely musical level, this acts as a sort of coda, a moment to affirm the final key of D minor, and to wind the music down and play that spinning wheel music just once more. But it also gives an extraordinary psychological, dramatic effect. That after all her wild passion, she sinks once more into exhaustion and despair. And we feel how much has changed. The spinning wheel is musically exactly the same notes as the beginning, only now our understanding of the whole situation has transformed. Schubert isn't just imitating the sound of a spinning wheel. That in itself isn't really that interesting. What makes it aesthetically powerful is when we realize the spinning wheel has become a kind of musical, metaphorical representation of the uneasy restlessness of her mind. After the first half of the song, the idea of an actual spinning wheel fades into the background, and we become more and more aware of the subjective representation of Gretchen's mind, the spinning anxiety within it. And what I haven't mentioned is that all this while, Schubert has moved seamlessly through every single key in the D minor scale, and some extra, all helping to represent her spinning mind. And so, what makes this song a masterpiece is the way that Schubert is so powerfully able to enter into the female psyche and dramatically express it through music. But it's also the way in which narrative, drama, harmony, rhythm, and melody all move together in a single thread towards this conclusion. And the way that Schubert maintains his unbroken melodic line with the singer, all while constantly modulating and changing key. Schubert is showing a mastery of dramatic form and of musical form, and all of this at the age of 17.